What do you mean I've been cut from the trust? My voice echoed through my father's mahogany-paneled study, the family portraits of Blake generations staring down at me in judgment. After everything I've sacrificed? The devastating blow my parents delivered that day was meant to break me. Instead, it became the catalyst that would ultimately save my life and expose a truth no one saw coming. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I still remember the exact moment when I became the family disappointment. It was during Sunday brunch at my parents' waterfront penthouse in Boston, a monthly tradition that felt more like a performance review than a family gathering. My father, Harrison Blake, founder of Blake Capital Management, presided over these brunches like a CEO over a board meeting. My mother, Victoria, with her perfect posture and calculated smiles, played the role of the supportive spouse who secretly pulled more strings than anyone realized. The spring sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the harbor below and the family photos lining the credenza, nearly all featuring my sister Eliza in her various moments of triumph. Harvard Law graduation, her partnership announcement, the charity award she'd received last year. I'd attended every celebration, clapping until my hands hurt, genuinely proud of my older sister even as I felt the weight of comparison crushing me a little more each time. More mimosa, Marcus? My mother's voice pulled me from my thoughts, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. At 29, I was the youngest Blake, the one who had always marched to his own drummer, much to my parents' ongoing dismay. No thanks, Mom. I'm good. I pushed my Eggs Benedict around the plate, already dreading the inevitable interrogation about my career. Eliza just closed the Henderson merger, my father announced, swirling his mimosa. $2 billion. The youngest attorney to ever lead a deal of that magnitude at the firm. His chest puffed out slightly as he said it, as though he'd personally negotiated every term. That's wonderful, I said, catching my sister's eye. She gave me a small, apologetic smile. For all her achievements, Eliza had never been the one to throw them in my face. That was our parents' specialty. And what about you, Marcus? My mother's question carried the weight of expectation. How is your project coming along? She said project the way someone might refer to a child's science fair experiment, with patronizing tolerance. I took a deep breath. 2 years ago, I had left my management consulting position at Deloitte to launch Vital Vision, a telemedicine platform focused on bringing affordable mental health services to underserved communities. The decision had been met with reactions ranging from my father's cold fury to my mother's tearful accusations of throwing away my education and their connections. We've secured partnerships with 3 community health centers in Dorchester, Roxbury, and East Boston, I said, trying to inject enthusiasm into my voice. Our patient engagement is up 40% this quarter, and we're finalizing a grant application with the Lockman Foundation that could fund our expansion into rural Massachusetts. My mother nodded politely, the way one might acknowledge a street performer, before walking past. My father didn't bother with such pretense. Grants, he interrupted, setting down his fork with a clink that silenced the table. You left a 6-figure salary to chase grants and help people who can't pay for services? He shook his head, the lines around his mouth deepening. This isn't charity work, Marcus. This is business. I felt the familiar heat rising in my chest. Healthcare is broken in this country, I said, keeping my voice measured despite the frustration building inside me. Mental health services are completely inaccessible to millions of Americans. We're building something that matters. Something with purpose. Purpose doesn't pay dividends, my father said dismissively. Your grandfather built our family fortune from nothing. I tripled it. And he gestured vaguely, giving it away. The unfairness of his characterization stung. I wasn't giving anything away. I was creating a sustainable business model that could revolutionize access to mental health care. The fact that it wouldn't make me a millionaire overnight was beside the point. My mother placed her hand on his arm, a gesture that appeared calming but was actually her signal to take over. "What your father means, darling, is that we're concerned. You're almost 30. You've abandoned a promising career path for this idealistic venture that hasn't turned a profit in 2 years. Not everything is about immediate profit," I countered, knowing even as I spoke that my words were falling on deaf ears. "We're building infrastructure, gathering data, proving our model works. The revenue will follow." "When?" My father's question hung in the air like a challenge. Before I could answer, my mother smoothly changed the subject to their upcoming charity gala. The subtext was clear. My career choices weren't worth discussing further. This was the Blake family way. Difficult conversations weren't resolved. They were simply redirected until the troublesome party, invariably me, got the message. I caught Eliza watching me with sympathy, but she remained silent. She'd learned long ago that taking my side meant placing herself in the crosshairs. After brunch, as I was leaving, my father called me into his study, the inner sanctum where all important family decisions were announced. My stomach dropped. Nothing good ever came from being summoned to the study. To my surprise, Eliza was already seated on one of the leather chairs, looking uncomfortable. Her eyes met mine briefly before darting away. Warning bells went off in my head. "Your mother and I have been discussing the family trust," he began without preamble. "As you know, your grandfather established it to ensure the Blake legacy continues through generations." I nodded, suddenly alert to the shift in his tone. The Blake family trust was substantial, established by my grandfather when he sold his manufacturing company in the 1970s. It had grown to nearly $15 million, split equally between my sister and me, accessible when we turned 35 or in case of extraordinary circumstances. "We've decided to make some adjustments," he continued, pulling out a folder with the family lawyer's letterhead. "Effective immediately, you've been removed as a beneficiary. Your portion will be redirected to Eliza and her future children." "What? Do you mean I've been cut from the trust?" My voice bounced off the wood-paneled walls, the portrait of my grandfather, stern and judging, staring down at me. "After everything I've sacrificed?" "Sacrificed?" My father's eyebrows shot up. "You haven't sacrificed anything, Marcus. You've abandoned opportunity. There's a difference." "Dad, this isn't fair," Eliza interjected, her voice quiet but firm. "Marcus is building something important." "Important doesn't secure the family's financial future," my mother said, entering the room with 2 glasses of scotch. One for herself, one for my father. The fact that there wasn't one for me was symbolic of everything wrong with this family. "Your portion of the trust was intended for someone who would honor the Blake tradition of excellence and financial acumen. You've demonstrated neither." The words hit like physical blows. This wasn't just about money, it was about being erased from the family legacy. "You can't do this," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Grandfather's trust is ironclad. I've seen the documents. There's a provision for beneficiary reassessment in cases where the trustees, your mother and I, determine that a beneficiary is acting against the interests of legacy preservation." My father's legal jargon couldn't disguise what he was really saying. I was a disappointment who couldn't be trusted with the family money. "This is because of vital vision," I stated. "Not a question, but a certainty." "This is because you've shown poor judgment," my mother corrected. "First leaving Deloitte, then rejecting connections we offered with proper healthcare companies, and now burning through your savings on a venture that helps people who can't even pay for services." In that moment, looking at their impassive faces, I realized a fundamental truth. My parents didn't value changing lives. They valued balance sheets. To them, success had a very specific definition, and I would never meet it. "Is there anything I can say to change your minds?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Get a real job," my father said bluntly. "Return to consulting. Use your education for something practical. Show us you can be responsible with resources, and perhaps we'll reconsider in a few years." I looked at them, these people who had raised me but never really seen me, and felt something shift inside. Not heartbreak, though that was there too, but resolve. "I understand," I said quietly, standing up. "Thank you for making things so clear." As I left the penthouse that day, I had no idea that their decision to cut me from the trust would set in motion a chain of events that would not only vindicate my vision but expose secrets the Blake family had buried for generations. The next morning, I woke up in my modest Cambridge apartment feeling strangely liberated. The weight of my parents' expectations had been replaced by something else, a clarity I hadn't experienced in years. I made coffee and stood by my window, watching Harvard students hurry across the street with backpacks and ambition. My phone buzzed with a text from Eliza. "I'm so sorry about yesterday. Can we meet for coffee?" I hesitated before responding. My sister had always navigated a careful middle path, never directly opposing our parents, but occasionally throwing me sympathetic glances or small gestures of support. It wasn't enough, but I also couldn't blame her for protecting her position. The Blake family dynamic was a minefield, and Eliza had learned to tiptoe through it perfectly. "Sure. Thinking cup on Newberry at noon?" 3 hours later, I was sitting across from my sister, who looked immaculate as always in her tailored blazer and silk blouse, the uniform of a successful Boston attorney. The contrast with my jeans and button-down couldn't have been more striking. "I tried to talk them out of it," she said immediately, stirring her latte. "After you left, I told them it was cruel and unnecessary. But they didn't budge," I finished for her. "No," she looked genuinely regretful. "Dad said something about teaching you a lesson. Mom was worried about appearances if you failed publicly." She made air quotes around the words. "Marcus, I want you to know that when I get my portion, I plan to—" I held up my hand. "Don't. I don't want your money, Eliza." "It's not my money. Half of it was supposed to be yours." Her perfectly shaped eyebrows drew together. "This isn't right." "No, it's not," I agreed. "But it's clarifying. I've been trying to prove myself to them my entire life. Getting into Northwestern instead of Harvard was my first failure. Choosing computer science over finance was my second. Starting Vital Vision instead of climbing the corporate ladder was the final straw. "They're proud of you," she insisted weakly. "They just don't understand what you're building." I laughed, the sound hollow even to my own ears. "They've never tried to understand." "Did you know Dad wouldn't even look at my business plan?" Mom changed the subject every time I tried to explain our user metrics. They decided Vital Vision was a failure before it even launched. Eliza sighed, her shoulders dropping slightly. "I know they can be rigid, but they want what's best for you." "No, they want what looks best for them." The words came out sharper than I intended, and I saw my sister flinch. "I'm sorry. This isn't your fault. But I need you to understand something. I'm not giving up. Being cut from the trust changes nothing about my belief in what we're building." She studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. "You really believe in this, don't you?" With everything I have, I leaned forward. "Mental health care in this country is broken, Eliza. It's inaccessible, unaffordable, and stigmatized. Our platform connects patients in underserved areas with therapists through secure video sessions at a fraction of the traditional cost. We're already seeing incredible outcomes from our pilot programs." "How are you funding it?" she asked, her legal mind always practical. "Angel investors who actually understand healthcare technology, small grants, and—" I hesitated. "Most of my savings." Concern flickered across her face. "And now without the trust as a safety net—" "I'll find a way," I said with more confidence than I felt. The truth was, being cut from the trust had serious implications for my company's runway. I had been counting on accessing at least part of those funds when I turned 35 to scale the platform nationally. As we parted ways outside the cafe, Eliza hugged me tightly, a rarity for my normally reserved sister. "Keep me updated, okay? I want to know how things are going." "I will," I promised, wondering if this shared secret had somehow bridged the careful distance we normally maintained. Back at my apartment, I called an emergency meeting with my small team. Aisha, our brilliant lead developer who'd left a cushy job at Google to join us. Kai, our UX designer who understood the unique needs of mental health patients, and Miguel, our operations manager who kept us all functioning despite limited resources. We gathered around my dining table that doubled as our conference room when we weren't working out of a shared office space in Kendall Square. "I'm going to be direct," I said after everyone had settled. "My personal financial situation has changed, and it affects our timeline." I explained about being cut from the trust, carefully framing it as a business challenge rather than a family drama. "So we need to accelerate our path to profitability," Aisha summarized, her mind already working on solutions. "The Lockman Foundation grant becomes even more crucial now." "Exactly," I nodded. "And we need to be strategic about which features we develop next. Anything that doesn't directly contribute to user acquisition or retention gets backburnered." Miguel looked up from his notes. "I've been crunching our numbers. If we convert just 15% of our current pilot users to the premium tier, and they stay subscribed for an average of 6 months, we could break even by Q4. That's actually not as bad as I expected," I admitted. "What about the West Massachusetts expansion?" "We table it," Kai suggested. "Focus on deepening our penetration in the current markets first. It's cheaper to increase adoption in existing locations than to expand to new ones." As my team strategized, I felt a surge of gratitude. These people believed in our mission enough to work for below-market salaries, with minimal benefits and uncertain futures. They deserved better, and I was determined to deliver it for them. After the meeting, Aisha lingered behind. With her typical directness, she asked, "Are you okay? Really?" I considered deflecting but found I didn't have the energy for it. "Not entirely, but I will be." She nodded, her expression serious. "My parents disowned me when I came out, you know. Cut me off completely during my second year at MIT. I hadn't known." Aisha rarely talked about her personal life. "I'm telling you this because I learned something important," she continued. "Sometimes the people who should support you the most are the ones who understand you the least. It doesn't mean your vision is wrong. It just means they can't see it." Her words stayed with me long after she left. That night, as I reviewed our financial projections until my eyes burned, I kept thinking about vision, what my parents couldn't see, what we were building, and what might lie ahead. The next morning brought unexpected news. An email from Dr. Elena Patel, the Director of Community Health Services for Horizon Health Systems, a mid-sized healthcare provider with 20 facilities across New England. "Mr. Blake, I observed your presentation at the Healthcare Innovation Conference last month and was impressed by your approach to mental health access. Horizon Health is considering telemedicine partners for our community clinics, and your focus on affordability and user experience aligns with our mission. Would you be available to discuss a potential pilot program across 3 of our facilities? Regards, Dr. Elena Patel." My heart raced as I read the email twice more. This was exactly the type of partnership we needed. A respected healthcare provider that could validate our model and provide a steady revenue stream. I immediately forwarded it to my team with a series of excited exclamation points. Within minutes, my phone rang. It was Miguel. "This is huge," he said without preamble. "Horizon is respected, they've got reach, and a pilot with them would make the Lockman grant application much stronger." "I know," I agreed, already mentally preparing my presentation. "Let's meet at the office in an hour to prepare our approach." By the time I arrived at our shared workspace, Aisha and Kai were already huddled around a whiteboard, mapping out how our platform could integrate with Horizon's existing patient management systems. The energy in the room was electric, the kind of collective purpose that no amount of family disapproval could diminish. As we worked, I received another text from Eliza. "Dad's in a mood. Asked me if I was conspiring with you. What's going on?" I frowned at my phone. How would my father know about the Horizon opportunity? We hadn't announced anything publicly, and I had only just received the email. "No idea what he's talking about," I texted back. "Everything's fine, just focused on work." 3 days later, I was preparing for my video call with Dr. Patel when my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Is this Marcus Blake?" a woman's voice asked when I answered. "Yes, speaking." "This is Amanda from Dr. Patel's office at Horizon Health. I'm calling to reschedule your meeting with Dr. Patel. She's been called into an urgent board meeting and needs to postpone." "Of course, no problem," I said, reaching for my calendar. "When would work better for her?" A pause. "Actually," she asked, "me to let you know that Horizon is reevaluating all their technology initiatives. She'll be in touch when they're ready to resume discussions." The professional language couldn't disguise what was really happening. They were pulling back. But why? Our preliminary discussions had been promising, and Dr. Patel had seemed genuinely enthusiastic about our approach. "May I ask if there's been a change in priorities?" I tried to keep my voice neutral. "I'm sorry, Mr. Blake. I don't have any additional information. Dr. Patel just asked me to convey that message." After hanging up, I sat motionless at my desk, trying to make sense of the sudden reversal. It seemed too coincidental that my father had been upset just days before this cancellation, but how could he possibly influence Horizon Health's decisions? The answer came that evening, as I was scrolling through LinkedIn updates. A post from Blake Capital Management caught my eye. "BCM is pleased to announce a strategic investment in Mindwell Technologies, a leader in digital mental health solutions. This partnership underscores our commitment to healthcare innovation and expanding access to critical services." Accompanying the post was a photo of my father shaking hands with Carter Williams, the CEO of Mindwell, our most direct competitor, in the mental health telemedicine space. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. My father hadn't just cut me from the family trust. He was actively investing in my competition. And given the timing of Horizon's sudden change of heart, he was likely using his influence to close doors for Vital Vision. This wasn't just about disappointment anymore. This was sabotage. The revelation of my father's investment in Mindwell Technologies kept me awake that night, pacing my apartment until the early hours. This wasn't just parental disappointment. This was deliberate undermining. The man who had lectured me about business acumen my entire life was now using his influence to ensure my venture failed. The betrayal cut deeper than being removed from the trust. By morning, my shock had hardened into resolve. I called an emergency meeting with my team, this time at a small cafe several blocks from our co-working space, somewhere we wouldn't be overheard. "We have a problem," I said once everyone had coffee. I explained my father's investment in Mindwell and the suspicious timing of Horizon Health's withdrawal. "That's pretty messed up," Kai said after a moment of stunned silence. "Your own? Father is trying to tank your company?" "It's not just about my company," I clarified, the realization crystallizing as I spoke. "It's about control. My entire life, my parents have defined success on their terms. Vital Vision represents my rejection of their values, choosing impact over profit margins, helping underserved communities instead of wealthy clients. They can't allow it to succeed, because it would validate my path over theirs." Aisha, ever practical, brought us back to immediate concerns. "So what do we do? If Blake Capital is actively working against us, we could lose other potential partnerships, too. Not to mention the Lockman grant," Miguel added. Your father must have connections there as well. They were right. My father's network spanned Boston's entire financial and philanthropic ecosystem. If he was determined to see Vital Vision fail, he could close many doors with a few strategic phone calls. I took a deep breath. We need to pivot, not our mission, but our approach. For the next 3 hours, we reimagined our strategy from the ground up. If traditional healthcare partnerships were being blocked, we would go directly to community organizations, churches, libraries, community centers, places beyond my father's sphere of influence. We would build our user base from the grassroots up instead of the top down. We should also consider adjacent revenue streams, Aisha suggested. What about licensing our tech to educational institutions? Schools are desperate for affordable mental health resources for students. And international markets, Kai added, warming to the challenge. Your father's connections are largely US-based. What about Canada or the UK? Their healthcare systems might be even more receptive to our model. As ideas flowed, I felt something shift within our team. The threat had galvanized us, transformed us from a struggling startup into fighters with a cause. My father had inadvertently given us something precious, the freedom that comes from having nothing left to lose. One more thing, I said as our meeting concluded. I understand if any of you want to walk away from this. The path just got significantly harder, and I can't guarantee where it leads. Miguel snorted. Are you kidding? Now we're not just helping people access mental health care. We're sticking it to corporate interference. I'm more committed than ever. Aisha and Kai nodded in agreement. Besides, Aisha added with a rare smile, I didn't leave Google to work on just any project. I believe in what we're building. If your father doesn't see its value, that's his failure, not ours. Their loyalty nearly broke me. These brilliant people could be working anywhere, earning double their current salaries with actual benefits and security. Instead, they were choosing to follow me into an uncertain battle against formidable opposition. Thank you, I said simply, not trusting myself with more words. After the meeting, I walked to Boston Common, needing space to think. The park was filled with people enjoying the spring weather. Families, couples, students sprawled on the grass with books. Normal lives untouched by family betrayal and corporate sabotage. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Your father says you've been calling his investors. Stop making trouble, Marcus. I stared at the message in disbelief. I hadn't contacted anyone associated with my father. This was either a misunderstanding or, more likely, another manipulation tactic. I haven't contacted anyone, I texted back. But I'd appreciate if Dad would stop interfering with my business. Her response came immediately. Don't be dramatic. Your father has every right to invest in promising healthcare technologies. Perhaps if your venture was more viable, he would have considered it. The casual dismissal reignited my anger. I was about to type a heated response when another text arrived, this one from an unknown number. Marcus Blake. This is Dr. Sarah Chen from Community Health Alliance. I heard your presentation at the Healthcare Innovation Conference and have been following your work. Would like to discuss a potential collaboration. Please call me at this number if interested. I hesitated, suspicious of the timing. Could this be another setup? But the Community Health Alliance was a nonprofit network of clinics serving low-income neighborhoods. Exactly the kind of organization that aligned with our mission. I decided to call, preparing myself for either opportunity or disappointment. Dr. Chen? This is Marcus Blake returning your call. Mr. Blake, thank you for getting back to me so quickly. Her voice was warm and energetic. I've been following Vital Vision since your beta launch last year. Your user engagement metrics are impressive, especially for mental health applications where retention is typically a challenge. My wariness eased slightly. She clearly knew our platform beyond surface details. Thank you. we've focused heavily on creating an experience that reduces stigma and barriers to consistent care. That's exactly why I'm calling. Community Health. Alliance serves populations with limited access to mental health services. We've been looking for a telemedicine partner that understands the unique challenges our patients face. For the next 20 minutes, Dr. Chen outlined her vision for bringing mental health care to communities across Massachusetts. The Alliance had recently received a federal grant to expand telehealth services and was seeking technology partners. We don't need another generic video platform, she explained. We need a solution built specifically for mental health, with features that address real barriers, language support, low bandwidth options, cultural competency. From what I've seen, Vital Vision addresses these concerns thoughtfully. By the end of the call, we had scheduled a formal presentation for the following week. This wasn't just a lifeline for Vital Vision. It was validation that our approach had merit, regardless of my father's opinion. As I walked back to my apartment, a new determination fueled each step. My father might have resources and connections, but I had something he couldn't understand. A solution designed for people he'd never bothered to consider. His investment in Mindwell made strategic sense on paper. They had impressive venture backing, a sleek marketing campaign, and partnerships with prestigious health systems. What they lacked was authentic connection to the communities they claimed to serve. When I reached my building, I found Eliza waiting by the entrance, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. "We need to talk," she said, her voice tight with tension. "Not here. Can we go inside?" Once in my apartment, she paced the small living room, avoiding my eyes. "What's going on?" I asked, alarmed by her behavior. "I overheard Dad on a call with Carter Williams from Mindwell." She finally stopped pacing to face me. "Marcus, he's not just investing in them. He's actively working to undermine Vital Vision. He mentioned something about reaching out to the Lockman Foundation to express concerns about your approach." The confirmation of my suspicions should have angered me, but instead, I felt an odd calm. I'm not surprised. He's made it clear what he thinks of my business. "This goes beyond disapproval," Eliza insisted. "He's using his connections to block your opportunities. It's unethical, possibly even legally questionable." "Why are you telling me this?" I studied my sister's face. "You've never gone against Dad before." She sank onto my couch, suddenly looking exhausted. "Because it's wrong. I've spent my entire career upholding legal and ethical standards. I can't stand by while our father uses his influence to destroy something you've built. Something that could actually help people." She hesitated. "And because I'm tired of being the good child at the expense of my relationship with my brother." Her admission stirred complicated feelings. Eliza had always been the perfect Blake daughter, fulfilling our parents' expectations without question. I'd never considered how that role might have trapped her. "What exactly did you hear?" I asked, sitting beside her. "He told Williams that he'd take care of your grant application, and suggested that Blake Capital could help Mindwell secure exclusive contracts with healthcare systems where you've been making inroads." She met my eyes directly. "He also said something about accessing your user data to help Mindwell refine their targeting." "What?" I stood up, alarm coursing through me. How would he access our data? "I don't know. But Marcus, if he's trying to get your user information, this goes beyond business competition. It's potentially illegal." My mind raced. We had robust security protocols, but if someone with resources was specifically targeting us, I needed to alert Aisha immediately. "Thank you for telling me," I said, already pulling out my phone. "This changes things." "What are you going to do?" Eliza asked, concern etching her features. I considered the question carefully. The path ahead had never been more difficult, or more clear. "I'm going to protect what we've built," I said finally. "And then I'm going to prove that Vital Vision isn't just viable, it's necessary." After Eliza left, I spent hours on the phone with Aisha, implementing additional security measures and moving our most sensitive data to secure servers. We changed access protocols and notified our pilot users of potential phishing attempts disguised as system updates. That night, I drafted 2 emails. The first was to Dr. Chen at Community Health Alliance, confirming our presentation and attaching preliminary integration plans that Aisha had quickly developed. The second was to my father. Dad, I know about your investment in Mindwell and your efforts to undermine Vital Vision. I want to be clear about something. I will not abandon this company or our mission, regardless of what doors you close or what obstacles you create. You've spent years telling me what success looks like. Now, I'm going to show you. Marcus. I hesitated before hitting send, knowing this would irrevocably change our relationship. But as I looked around my apartment at the whiteboards filled with user feedback, the sticky notes mapping patient journeys, and the thank you messages from people who'd accessed therapy for the first time through our platform, I knew there was no going back. I sent the email, then opened my laptop to review our presentation for the Community Health Alliance. If my father wanted war, I would give him one, not with his weapons of money and influence, but with innovation, impact, and purpose. The battle for Vital Vision's future had begun, and with it, my irreversible commitment to a path entirely of my own making. The week following my confrontation with my father was a blur of preparation, security updates, and strategic planning. I expected some form of retaliation after my email, but the response was silence, which, knowing my father, was more concerning than anger. Our presentation to the Community Health Alliance exceeded all expectations. Dr. Chen and her team of 5 clinical directors asked challenging, thoughtful questions that demonstrated their genuine understanding of the communities they served. What I appreciate about your platform, Dr. Chen said as we wrapped up, is that it wasn't designed for affluent patients and then adapted for low-income communities as an afterthought. You built it from the ground up to address real barriers, language, options, text-based alternatives when video isn't possible, flexible scheduling for people working multiple jobs. Her colleague, Dr. Martinez, nodded in agreement. The cultural competency training for providers is particularly impressive. Most platforms treat that as optional or supplementary. We left with a verbal commitment to pilot Vital Vision across all 12 of their Massachusetts clinics, serving approximately 40,000 patients. The contract would be modest by industry standards. The alliance operated on tight budgets, but it would provide stable revenue and, more importantly, validation from respected healthcare professionals. This is just the beginning, Miguel said, as we celebrated with cheap champagne back at the office. Once we demonstrate results with the alliance, other community health organizations will follow. He was right. Within 3 weeks of announcing our partnership with the Community Health Alliance, we received inquiries from similar organizations in Rhode Island, Connecticut, and New Hampshire. Our grassroots strategy was working. We were building momentum below my father's radar. The Lockman Foundation grant situation was less positive. We received a politely worded rejection letter citing alignment with other strategic initiatives as the reason. I had no doubt my father's influence had played a role, but we had anticipated this setback and were already pursuing alternative funding sources. What surprised me was an email from Carter Williams, CEO of Mindwell Technologies, requesting a meeting. It's obviously a trap, Aisha said when I shared the email with the team. They probably want to gather intelligence on our approach. Or try to acqui-hire us, Kai suggested. Buy Vital Vision just to shut it down and absorb our team. Both scenarios seemed plausible, but I was curious about what Williams would say. I think I should meet him, I decided. At minimum, it gives us insight into their strategy. And who knows, maybe there's something else going on. We agreed I would meet Williams at a neutral location, a cafe in Cambridge far from both our offices, and that I would share no proprietary information. Carter Williams was exactly what I expected. Late 40s, immaculately dressed in business, casual that probably cost more than my monthly rent, with the confident demeanor of someone accustomed to getting his way. What surprised me was his opening statement. "I'll be direct, Marcus. I didn't know Harrison Blake was your father when we started discussing investment with Blake Capital. I kept my expression neutral. And now that you do? Now I'm concerned about the nature of our arrangement." He glanced around before continuing more quietly. "Your father has been unusually involved in our strategic decisions. Specifically, he suggested we target partnerships with organizations that I later discovered had been in discussions with Vital Vision." This confirmed what Eliza had overheard, but hearing it directly from Williams was still jarring. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, studying him carefully. Williams sighed, looking genuinely uncomfortable. "Because I built Mindwell to expand mental health care access, not to engage in corporate sabotage. I didn't realize I was being used as a weapon in a family dispute." "It's more than a family dispute," I corrected. "It's about fundamentally different approaches to healthcare. Vital Vision is focused on underserved communities that traditional providers have ignored. From what I've seen, Mindwell targets employer benefits programs and university health systems, lucrative markets with existing resources." "That's fair," Williams conceded. "But those aren't mutually exclusive approaches. The mental health crisis is so vast that we need multiple solutions targeting different segments." He seemed sincere, which made me even more curious about his motives. "Again, why this meeting? What do you want from me?" Williams leaned forward. "I want to propose a collaboration instead of competition. Mindwell has the resources and connections to scale quickly in commercial markets. Vital Vision has developed innovative approaches for underserved communities that we haven't been able to match. What if we created a strategic partnership? You maintain your independence and community focus, we handle the enterprise side, and we share technology and insights." I wasn't naive enough to accept such an offer at face value. "And my father? He's your largest investor. How would he react to this partnership?" "Harrison doesn't know I'm here," Williams admitted. "And he wouldn't approve. But he's not our only investor, and our board has expressed concerns about his personal involvement in operational decisions." The implications were significant. If Williams was telling the truth, there was friction between my father and Mindwell's other stakeholders. That could create an opening for Vital Vision. "I'll need to discuss this with my team," I said carefully. "And we'd require complete transparency about the relationship with Blake Capital going forward." Williams nodded. "Of course. Take your time. But I believe we could accomplish more together than as adversaries, especially with your father trying to influence the playing field." As we parted ways, I felt cautiously optimistic. The meeting revealed potential cracks in my father's strategy and opened a door I hadn't considered. A strategic partnership might accelerate our impact without compromising our mission. I shared the conversation with my team that afternoon, expecting skepticism. I wasn't disappointed. "It could be an elaborate ploy to get inside information," Aisha warned. "Why would Williams risk alienating his biggest investor?" "Because investors who meddle in operational decisions are red flags," Miguel suggested. "If Blake is pushing Mindwell in directions their board disagrees with, Williams might be looking for leverage. Or maybe he genuinely believes in expanding mental health care and sees value in our approach," Kai offered. Always the optimist, Kai tended to see the best in people's motivations. We debated the proposal from every angle, weighing risks against potential benefits. By the end of the discussion, we had a tentative plan. We would explore the partnership possibility while maintaining strict boundaries around our technology and user data. Trust would need to be earned incrementally. Meanwhile, our work with the Community Health Alliance was progressing rapidly. We had integrated our platform with their electronic health record system ahead of schedule, and the first clinics were beginning to onboard patients. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Patients who previously waited months for in-person appointments are now accessing care within days, Dr. Chen reported during our weekly check-in. And the no-show rate is less than half what we see for traditional appointments because transportation and childcare barriers are eliminated. These early successes attracted attention from healthcare publications. Modern Healthcare ran a feature on innovative approaches to mental health access, highlighting Vital Vision as a promising solution for community health centers. The article included quotes from clinical directors praising our platform's accessibility, features, and cultural competency approach. The morning after the article was published, I received an unexpected call from Jason Montgomery, the program director at the Kauffman Foundation, a respected healthcare philanthropy with significantly more resources than the Lockman Foundation. "I read about your work with the Community Health Alliance," he began without preamble. "We've been looking for technology partners focused on mental health equity. Would you be open to applying for our innovation grant? It's $750,000 over 2 years, specifically for scaling proven interventions." The amount nearly took my breath away. It was more than triple what we had requested from the Lockman Foundation and would provide enough runway to expand our team and accelerate development of key features. "We would definitely be interested," I managed to respond professionally, despite wanting to shout with excitement. "What's the application process?" "Normally quite extensive," Montgomery replied, "but given your demonstrated results with the Alliance, we could expedite things. I can send a modified application that builds on your existing implementation data." After the call, I sat at my desk in stunned silence. Things were turning around faster than I could have imagined. The Community Health Alliance partnership was exceeding expectations. Mindwell was potentially interested in collaboration rather than competition, and now a major foundation was proactively reaching out with grant opportunities. For the first time since being cut from the family trust, I felt not just determined, but genuinely hopeful. We had found our path forward, not through the connections and resources my parents had always insisted were necessary, but through the strength of our vision and the measurable impact of our work. That evening, Eliza called with news of her own. "I've been doing some digging," she said, her voice tense with excitement. "Legal research about trusts and fiduciary duty." "And?" I prompted, curious about her interest in the trust situation, which I had largely put behind me. "And I think Dad may have violated his fiduciary responsibilities as trustee by redirecting your portion based on business competition." She spoke faster, in the way she did when building a legal argument. "Grandfather's trust documents specifically prohibit using trustee discretion for personal benefit or competitive advantage. If Dad used his position as trustee to disadvantage your company while investing in a direct competitor, that's a textbook conflict of interest." The implications were significant, but I found myself strangely uninterested in challenging the trust decision. "Eliza, I appreciate your looking into this, but honestly, I'm focused on building Vital Vision regardless of the trust. If we succeed, the inheritance becomes irrelevant." "It's not about the money, Marcus," she insisted. "It's about principle. Dad can't use family resources as weapons in business disputes. It sets a dangerous precedent." Her passion surprised me. Eliza had always been the peacekeeper, avoiding direct confrontation with our parents. This newfound advocacy suggested a shift in her own relationship with our father. "Let me think about it," I conceded. "Right now, we're gaining momentum without that battle, and I don't want to divide my focus." After we hung up, I opened my laptop to review the latest user metrics from the Community Health Alliance implementation. The numbers were encouraging. 87% of patients reported the platform was easy or very easy to use, and clinicians estimated they could serve 30% more patients through the combination of in-person and virtual sessions. Real people were getting help who would otherwise go without. That impact, not my father's approval or my place in the family trust, was what mattered. The next morning, I received an email that raised both my hopes and my suspicions. The subject line read, Massachusetts Innovation Summit, Keynote Invitation. Dear Mr. Blake, on behalf of the organizing committee for the Massachusetts Innovation Summit, I am pleased to invite you to deliver a keynote address on technology solutions for healthcare equity at our upcoming conference in Boston. Your work with Vital Vision has garnered attention for its unique approach to expanding mental health access to underserved communities. We believe your perspective would be valuable to our audience of investors, healthcare executives, and policymakers. The summit will take place at the Boston Convention Center on June 15, 17. Your keynote would be scheduled for the opening day, immediately following Governor Carter's welcome address. Please let me know if you are available for this opportunity. Best regards, Samantha Torres. Program Director, Massachusetts Innovation Summit. The invitation was flattering and potentially game-changing. The summit was the premier healthcare technology event in New England, attended by decision-makers from major health systems, insurance companies, and investment firms. It would put Vital Vision on the map in a way no amount of grassroots expansion could achieve. It was also the type of opportunity that had previously been closed to us, the kind of high-profile platform that my father's connections typically controlled. Which raised an important question. Was this a legitimate opportunity or another trap? I forwarded the email to Miguel, who had contacts in the healthcare conference circuit. His response came within the hour. Checked with my friend at Mass General. Who's on the summit committee? The invitation is legitimate. Apparently, Dr. Chen from Community Health Alliance recommended you after their innovation director asked for suggestions of voices not typically heard at these events. This is big, Marcus. Really big. With Miguel's confirmation, I accepted the invitation and immediately began outlining my presentation. This would be Vital Vision's introduction to the established healthcare ecosystem, our chance to demonstrate that serving underserved communities wasn't just morally right, but economically viable. Over the next few weeks, our momentum continued to build. We submitted the expedited application to the Kauffman Foundation and began preliminary discussions with Carter Williams about potential collaboration areas. To my surprise, Williams proved to be genuinely engaged with the mission, offering insights from Mindwell's experience with larger health systems that could benefit our approach. Your user engagement metrics are extraordinary, he noted during one of our calls. We've been struggling with retention, especially in asynchronous messaging between sessions. How are you achieving such consistent participation? I explained. Our approach to culturally responsive design. How we'd worked directly with community members to create interfaces and workflows that reflected their actual lives rather than imposing clinical frameworks that felt foreign. That makes sense, Williams mused. We've been approaching it from a clinical efficiency standpoint rather than a user experience perspective. There's clearly room for us to learn from each other. These conversations reinforced my growing conviction that we were on the right path. The healthcare establishment was beginning to recognize what we had known from the start, that truly effective solutions required deep understanding of the communities they served, not just technological innovation. As the summit approached, I received another surprise, an invitation to appear on The Future of Health, a respected podcast hosted by Dr. Leanne Richards, former Surgeon General and current health policy advocate. The podcast reached healthcare leaders across the country and would amplify our message beyond New England. How are you handling all this sudden attention? Aisha asked as we worked late one evening, finalizing the data visualization for my summit presentation. Honestly, I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop, I admitted. It feels like we've turned a corner, but knowing my father, he's not done interfering. Aisha nodded thoughtfully. That's probably wise. But Marcus, don't let caution eclipse what we're achieving. Look at this data. we've helped nearly 3,000 people access mental health services who would otherwise go without. That's real impact, regardless of what comes next. She was right. Whatever my father's next move might be, the work we were doing mattered. The lives we were touching were real. And increasingly, the healthcare community was taking notice. 3. Morning of the summit, I woke early to review my presentation one final time. As I was making coffee, my phone rang with an unknown number. Marcus Blake? This is Regina Howard, health technology reporter at the Boston Globe. I'm doing a feature on innovative approaches to healthcare equity for our Sunday business section, and would like to include Vital Vision. Do you have time for an interview today or tomorrow? The request caught me off guard. The Globe was Boston's paper of record, read by everyone who mattered in the city's business and political circles, including my parents. I'd be happy to speak with you, I replied, trying to contain my excitement. I'm presenting at the Innovation Summit today, but could make time this evening or tomorrow morning. Perfect, Howard said. I'll be at the summit covering the keynote sessions. Perhaps we could speak after your presentation? I agreed and hung up, feeling a mixture of elation and apprehension. Media coverage in the Globe would be another significant milestone, and another chance for my father to notice our growing success. I dressed for the summit, choosing my one good suit, purchased for a cousin's wedding 3 years ago. I received a text from Eliza. Just heard you're keynoting the summit today. Dad knows too. He's been making calls all morning. Be careful. The warning sent a chill through me. What was my father planning? Would he try to undermine my presentation somehow? I texted back a quick thanks and headed to the convention center, mentally preparing for whatever might come. The summit venue was impressive, a soaring glass-fronted space overlooking Boston Harbor, filled with healthcare executives in expensive suits and bright-eyed entrepreneurs trying to catch their attention. I felt out of place despite my position as a keynote speaker, acutely aware that most attendees represented the traditional healthcare establishment, rather than community-focused innovators. As I waited in the speaker's lounge, reviewing my notes, one last time, I received an email notification that momentarily stopped my heart. The Kauffman Foundation had approved our grant application, $750,000 over 2 years, with the first disbursement to be processed immediately. I forwarded the email to my team with a string of exclamation points, then sat back, letting the reality sink in. We had done it. Despite my father's interference, despite being cut from the trust, we had secured the funding we needed to scale Vital Vision's impact. With this validation buoying my confidence, I stepped onto the stage when my name was called, facing an audience of over 500 healthcare leaders. As I began speaking about Vital Vision's mission and our early results, I spotted a familiar face in the front row, Carter Williams from Mindwell, nodding thoughtfully at my points about collaborative approaches to solving the mental health crisis. Then, in the back of the auditorium, I saw another familiar figure. My father, standing with arms crossed, his expression unreadable across the distance. I faltered momentarily, then continued with renewed determination. Let him see what I've built, I thought. Let him witness what's possible when you prioritize impact over profit margins. By the time I concluded, the audience response was overwhelming. Sustained applause, thoughtful questions, and a crowd of interested providers and potential partners gathering around me as I left the stage. As I navigated through well-wishers and business card exchanges, I caught sight of the reporter from the Globe taking notes. And beyond her, my father, no longer watching from a distance, but making his way purposefully toward me. Something in his expression told me the rising tide of Vital Vision's success was about to meet its strongest resistance yet. Quite a performance, my father said as he reached me, his voice carrying just enough volume for nearby attendees to hear. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Very inspiring. Though I noticed some significant omissions in your data, I maintained my professional demeanor, despite the churning in my stomach. Dad, this isn't the place. Harrison Blake, he introduced himself to the healthcare executive I'd been speaking with. Blake Capital Management. I believe we met at the Harvard Medical fundraiser last fall. The woman's eyes widened with recognition. Of course, Mr. Blake. Your contribution to the new research wing was extraordinarily generous. Just doing my part for healthcare innovation, he replied smoothly. I see you've met my son. Marcus has always had passionate ideas about healthcare delivery. The condescension in his tone was subtle but unmistakable. He was establishing context for everyone within earshot. Marcus Blake isn't to be taken seriously. He's an idealistic amateur, not a serious healthcare player. I excused myself from the conversation before my father could further undermine me. I need to speak with some other attendees. It was nice meeting you. As I moved through the crowd, I could feel my father's presence like a shadow. He didn't follow me directly, but circulated strategically, always a few conversations away, always visible. The message was clear. This was his territory, not mine. Regina Howard from the Boston Globe found me near the refreshment table. That was an excellent presentation, Mr. Blake. Your data on patient engagement in underserved communities is particularly compelling. Thank you, I said, grateful for the professional validation. We're seeing promising results from our approach. I understand your father is Harrison Blake, she continued, glancing in his direction. Blake Capital just made a significant investment in Mindwell Technologies, which operates in the same space. Any comment on the family connection? The question caught me off guard. I'd expected to discuss Vital Vision's work, not my family dynamics. Our approaches are quite different, I said carefully. Vital Vision focuses specifically on underserved communities and cultural competency in mental health care delivery. And the fact that your father is backing your direct competitor, that must create interesting dinner table conversations. Her probing made me increasingly uncomfortable. This wasn't about our technology or impact. It was about manufacturing family drama for readers. I'd prefer to focus on the work we're doing, I redirected. Vital Vision just received a significant grant from the Kauffman Foundation to expand our services to more community health centers. That's the story that matters. Howard smiled slightly. Of course. But readers are interested in the human element. The father-son competition adds a compelling dimension. Before I could respond, Carter Williams appeared at my side, extending his hand to the reporter. Carter Williams, CEO of Mindwell. I couldn't help overhearing. If you're doing a story on mental health technology innovation, you should know that Marcus and I have been discussing potential collaborations between our companies. His intervention surprised me, but I was grateful for the redirect. Collaborations? Howard's eyebrows rose. Despite the competing investments? The mental health crisis is too significant for unnecessary competition, Williams said smoothly. Different approaches can be complementary rather than adversarial. After the reporter moved on, I turned to Williams. Thank you for that. Shrugged. Family business should stay family business. Besides, I meant what I said about collaboration. As the summit concluded, I left with a mixture of emotions. My keynote had been well received, generating valuable connections and interest in Vital Vision. But my father's presence had cast a shadow over what should have been a triumphant day. Back at the office, I found my team gathered around Aisha's computer, their expressions grim. What's wrong? I asked, immediately alert to the tension in the room. Miguel gestured to the screen. Someone's been trying to breach our security again. More sophisticated than before. Shut everything down, I instructed, dropping my conference materials on the nearest desk. Implement emergency protocols. Over the next few hours, Aisha worked frantically to secure our systems while Miguel and Kai contacted our pilot sites to warn them about potential phishing attempts. The attack pattern was professional and targeted. Someone with resources was after our patient data and proprietary technology. I can't prove it's connected to your father, Aisha said as midnight approached. but the timing is suspicious. This started shortly after your keynote. I nodded, too exhausted for anger. At least we were prepared this time. The security breach attempt was concerning, but the grant from the Kauffman Foundation provided a counterbalance of good news. With those funds secure, we could accelerate our development roadmap and expand to more community health centers. However, the next morning brought a devastating phone call from Jason Montgomery at the foundation. "Marcus, we have a situation," he began, his voice tense. "Our board has received some concerning information about Vital Vision that we need to address." Before proceeding with the grant, my stomach dropped. "What kind of information?" "An anonymous source provided documentation suggesting your platform has significant security vulnerabilities that could compromise patient data. They included what appears to be internal testing reports showing failed security audits. The documents were fabrications. We had passed our security audits with high marks. This was sabotage, sophisticated and precisely timed. Those documents are false," I said firmly. "We can provide our actual security audit reports from 2 independent firms. Our platform exceeds HIPAA compliance requirements in every category." "I believe you," Montgomery said, "but the board is concerned. They've placed the grant on hold pending an investigation." "I'm sorry, Marcus. This isn't how we typically operate, but given the sensitive nature of mental health data, they're being extra cautious." After hanging up, I sat motionless at my desk, the implications washing over me. Without the Kauffman grant, our runway was dramatically shortened. We had enough operating capital for perhaps 3 months, maybe 4 if we cut back significantly. I called an emergency team meeting to share the news. Their reactions ranged from shock to anger to determination. "This is a deliberate attack," Miguel said, pacing the small conference room. "The timing is too perfect. Right after your successful keynote, right as we're gaining momentum." Kai, usually the optimist, looked distressed. "Can we even fight this? If someone's willing to forge documents and breach our security, what else might they do?" "We fight it with transparency and truth," Aisha said firmly. "We open our systems to additional audits. We document everything. Lies cannot withstand sustained scrutiny." They were right, of course, but the damage was already done. Even if we cleared our name with the Kauffman Foundation, the delay could be fatal for Vital Vision. We needed those funds to maintain operations, while expanding our user base. As we strategized our response, a text arrived from Carter Williams. "Need to talk. Urgent. Can you meet at 4 p.m.? Given everything happening, I was suspicious of his timing, but agreed to meet at the same neutral cafe as before. Williams arrived looking unusually disheveled, his normal confidence replaced with visible agitation. "I need to warn you," he said without preamble. "Your father called an emergency board meeting at Mindwell yesterday after the summit. He's convinced the other investors to authorize aggressive action against Vital Vision." "What kind of action?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Corporate. Espionage, basically. He hired a firm to create false security reports about your platform and distributed them to your potential partners and funders. There's more coming. They're planning to plant stories with healthcare journalists about patient complaints and data breaches." The methodical cruelty of it stunned me. "Why are you telling me this?" Williams ran a hand through his hair. "Because this isn't business. It's personal vengeance, and I won't be part of it. I founded Mindwell to help people access mental health care, not to destroy legitimate competitors through fraud." "Can you stop it?" I asked. I tried. The board overruled me. "Your father holds too much influence. He's threatening to pull his investment if they don't comply." Williams leaned forward. "Marcus, I'm resigning as CEO. I can't ethically continue under these circumstances. But before I go, I wanted you to know what you're facing." The warning was valuable, but changed little about our immediate crisis. With the Kauffman grant on hold, we needed to find alternative funding immediately, or begin scaling back operations. When I returned to the office, more bad news awaited. Dr. Chen from the Community Health Alliance had called, requesting an urgent meeting about concerning information they'd received regarding our platform. "It's spreading," Miguel said grimly. "If the Alliance pulls out, we lose our primary reference client. We need to get ahead of this," I decided. "Schedule meetings with all our current partners, full transparency about what's happening, and prepare a comprehensive security dossier we can share with anyone who receives these false reports." As my team mobilized, I received an unexpected call from Regina Howard at the Boston Globe. "Mr. Blake, I've received some troubling documentation about Vital Vision's security practices and wanted to get your comment before publishing. The fabricated reports had reached the media. This was escalating faster than we could respond." "Those documents are fraudulent," I said firmly. "We have evidence they were created as part of a deliberate campaign to discredit Vital Vision. I'd be happy to provide our actual security audits and discuss the context behind these false claims." Howard sounded skeptical, but agreed to review our materials before publishing anything. It was a small reprieve, but the situation remained dire. That evening, as I was preparing for my meeting with Dr. Chen, Eliza arrived at the office unannounced, looking pale and determined. "Dad called a family meeting tonight," she said without greeting. "Mom was there, and the family attorneys. I need to show you something." She handed me her phone, open to a recording app. "I recorded it. I know it was wrong, but you needed to hear this." I pressed play, and my father's voice filled the small office. "The board is fully aligned with our strategy. Marcus's little project will be radioactive within 2 weeks. No funding, no partners, no credibility. The fabricated security reports are just phase 1. We've identified former patients willing to make claims about privacy violations in exchange for compensation. The story will break in the healthcare press next week." My mother's voice followed. "Is this really necessary, Harrison? Can't you just let him fail on his own terms?" "Victoria, this isn't about Marcus anymore. It's about sending a message. No one challenges Blake Capital in our own industry. No one uses our name to promote inferior approaches that undermine legitimate healthcare businesses. The boy needs to learn there are consequences for his choices." The recording continued with clinical discussions of how they would systematically destroy everything I'd built, including contingency plans if I managed to counter their initial attacks. When it ended, Eliza looked at me, tears in her eyes. "I didn't know it would go this far. This isn't business strategy, Marcus. This is... I don't even know what to call it." "I do," I said quietly. "It's abuse of power. And possibly illegal. The recording gave us evidence of my father's methods, but it didn't solve our immediate crisis. The Kaufman grant was still on hold. The Community Health Alliance was wavering, and more fabricated claims were coming. With our limited resources, we couldn't fight a protracted battle against Blake Capital's influence and money. "What are you going to do?" Eliza asked. I considered our options. None of them good. We could try to weather the storm, knowing more attacks were coming. We could seek emergency funding from new sources, though that would be difficult with our reputation under attack. We could dramatically scale back operations to extend our runway, though that would mean failing the communities who relied on our services. "I need to think," I said finally. "Thank you for the recording. It helps to know what we're facing." After Eliza left, I sat alone in the darkening office, the scale of the crisis settling over me. My father wasn't just trying to ensure Vital Vision failed. He was working to destroy my professional reputation and credibility in the healthcare industry. This was scorched earth tactics designed not just to win, but to eliminate me as a future competitor. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "We missed you at the family dinner tonight. Your father wants to meet tomorrow to discuss a resolution to this unfortunate situation." 10 a.m. at his office. The timing suggested they didn't. No Eliza had recorded the meeting or shared it with me. This resolution would undoubtedly be designed to complete my humiliation, perhaps offering to hire me at Blake Capital under my father's thumb, or to acquire Vital Vision's assets for a pittance just to bury our technology. I didn't respond to the text. Instead, I called Miguel, Aisha, and Kai for an emergency strategy session at my apartment. If we were going down, we would go down fighting, with a plan to protect what mattered most: our users, our team, and the vision that had brought us together. As I waited for them to arrive, I stared at the family photo still displayed on my bookshelf, taken at Eliza's law school graduation, all of us smiling as if we were a normal, supportive family. With a decisive motion, I placed the frame face down in a drawer. Whatever came next, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: the Blake family would never be the same again. My team arrived at my apartment within the hour, each carrying laptops and determined expressions. We converted my living room into a war room, using the wall as a projection screen for our strategic planning. Let's assess where we stand, I began, forcing myself to approach this methodically despite the emotional turmoil. The Kaufman grant is on hold. The Community Health Alliance is wavering. Our security has been questioned, and we have evidence that my father is orchestrating all of it. The recording gives us leverage, Miguel suggested. We could threaten to release it if he doesn't back off. Aisha shook her head. That's mutually assured destruction. It might hurt Harrison Blake's reputation, but it would also associate Vital Vision with a public family scandal. Healthcare partners don't want that kind of drama. She was right. Using the recording as a threat would only reinforce the narrative that Vital Vision was my personal vendetta against my father, rather than a legitimate healthcare solution. What about legal options? Kai asked. What he's doing has to be illegal, right? It is, I confirmed. But legal battles take time and money, both of which are in short supply for us right now, and Blake Capital has an army of attorneys. So what's our move? Miguel asked, the frustration evident in his voice. I studied our financial projections on the screen. We need to buy time. If we can keep the Community Health Alliance on board and find bridge funding, we might weather this long enough to prove the security allegations false. We worked late into the night, developing a multi-pronged strategy. Aisha would compile comprehensive security documentation to counter the false reports. Miguel would develop emergency scaling-back scenarios to extend our runway. Kai would create communications for our users, assuring them of our commitment to their privacy and care. By 3 a.m., we had a plan. Not an ideal one, but the best we could manage with limited resources against a powerful opponent. Get some sleep, I told my exhausted team as they packed up. Tomorrow we start implementing. After they left, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at my phone. The text from my mother still showed on the screen, unanswered. The invitation to meet my father at his office felt like a trap, yet ignoring it would only accelerate his attacks. Finally texted back, I'll be there. Whatever he was planning, I needed to hear it directly. Perhaps face-to-face I could make him understand the human cost of his vendetta, not just to me and my team, but to the thousands of patients who relied on our services. Morning arrived too quickly. I dressed with deliberate care, choosing my most professional attire, not to impress my father, but to armor myself against whatever was coming. The Uber ride to Blake Capital's downtown offices gave me time to center myself, to remember that regardless of what happened in this meeting, our work mattered. Blake Capital occupied 3 floors of a gleaming financial district tower, its reception area a monument to corporate success with its marble floors, modernist furniture, and scale model of my grandfather's original factory, the genesis of the Blake fortune. Marcus Blake for Harrison Blake, I told the receptionist, who nodded with immediate recognition. They're expecting you in the main conference room, Mr. Blake. They. The plural caught my attention. This wasn't just a meeting with my father. The conference room confirmed my suspicion. My father sat at the head of the table, flanked by my mother and two men I recognized as Blake Capital's senior counsel. At the far end, looking uncomfortable but present nonetheless, was Eliza. "Marcus." My father greeted me without rising. "Thank you for coming. Please, have a seat." I chose a chair midway down the table, deliberately positioning myself as neither supplicant nor equal. "I understand you wanted to discuss a resolution." "Indeed." My father nodded to one of the attorneys, who slid a folder across the table toward me. "We've prepared a comprehensive proposal that addresses the current situation." I opened the folder to find a multi-page legal document titled Acquisition and Employment Agreement. Skimming the first page revealed the essence. Blake Capital would acquire all assets of Vital Vision for a nominal sum, and I would be offered a position as technology advisor reporting to Blake Capital's CTO. "You want to buy my company and hire me," I summarized, closing the folder without reading further. "We want to end this unfortunate conflict," my mother corrected, her voice gentle but firm. "This arrangement allows your work to continue under the Blake Capital umbrella with proper resources and oversight." "And what happens to Vital Vision's mission? Our focus on underserved communities?" My father made a dismissive gesture. "Elements of your approach that prove commercially viable would be integrated into Mindwell's expansion plans. The rest would be reassessed for market fit." Translation: they would strip our technology for parts and abandon the communities we served. The technology advisor role was window dressing. I would have no real authority over how our platform was used. "And my team?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "We would evaluate each member individually during the transition," the second attorney said smoothly. "Those with skills aligned to our needs would be offered appropriate positions." Slid the folder back across the table. "This isn't a resolution. It's a surrender." "It's reality," my father countered, his tone hardening. "Vital Vision has no path forward, Marcus. The Kaufman grant isn't coming. Community Health Alliance will terminate your contract by the end of the week. Your security issues will be headline news in the healthcare press by Monday." The casual certainty with which he detailed our destruction made my blood run cold. Not because of the threats themselves, I'd already anticipated them, but because of what they revealed. My father wasn't just trying to teach me a lesson. He was systematically eliminating a business approach he found threatening. "Why?" The question escaped before I could contain it. "Why destroy something that's helping people? Is it just because I chose a different path than the one you planned for me?" My father's expression shifted subtly. "This isn't personal, Marcus. It's about protecting the healthcare ecosystem from well-meaning, but ultimately harmful disruption. Your approach prioritizes access over quality, volume over proven outcomes. It's unsustainable and potentially dangerous." "That's not true," I responded, keeping my voice level. "Our outcomes data shows significant improvement in patient well-being. Our approach works precisely because it prioritizes access. People can't benefit from care they can't receive. Anecdotal successes don't constitute a viable healthcare model," he dismissed. "The established system exists for a reason. Your attempt to circumvent it with technology shortcuts puts vulnerable patients at risk." As he spoke, something clicked. Into place. A realization that had been forming since I first discovered his investment in Mindwell. This wasn't just about my rejection of the Blake family path. It was about a fundamental threat Vital Vision posed to the healthcare investment strategy that had built my father's fortune. Blake Capital's healthcare portfolio consisted primarily of high-margin specialty providers, pharmaceutical companies, and traditional insurance models, all of which benefited from the status quo of limited access and high costs. Our model of affordable, accessible mental health care represented a systemic threat to that portfolio. "This isn't about patient safety," I said slowly. "It's about protecting your investments. Vital Vision demonstrates that healthcare can be both accessible and effective. If our model succeeds, it undermines the artificial scarcity that makes your healthcare holdings so profitable. My father's momentary silence confirmed my insight. My mother glanced at him nervously. "You're oversimplifying complex market dynamics," he finally said. "The healthcare system requires substantial capital investment to maintain quality. Your approach undermines the economic foundation that makes innovation possible." "That's the justification you've created," I countered. "But the reality is that you're protecting a system that generates enormous wealth for a few while leaving millions without care. And you're willing to destroy a viable alternative to maintain that system." Eliza, who had remained silent throughout the exchange, suddenly spoke. "Is that true, Dad? Is this about protecting investments rather than patients?" My father turned to her with evident irritation. "This is business, Eliza. Complex business with significant implications beyond Marcus's limited perspective." "Answer the question," she insisted, with a firmness I'd rarely heard from my conflict-avoidant sister. "If Vital Vision is actually helping patients who can't access care otherwise, why are you working so hard to shut it down?" The shift in dynamics was palpable. My father had expected a united front against me. Instead, his golden child was asking uncomfortable questions. "Enough," he said sharply. "We're here to resolve the situation, not debate healthcare philosophy." He turned back to me. "The offer stands until 5 p.m. tomorrow. After that, we proceed with our original plan. I suggest you consider your team members and your users before making your decision." The threat was clear. "Take the deal or watch Vital Vision burn." "I'll need to discuss this with my team," I said, rising from the table. It was a stalling tactic. I had no intention of accepting the offer, but I needed time to implement our contingency plans. As I turned to leave, my father added a final barb. "One more thing, Marcus. The board has approved a substantial expansion of our Mindwell investment. They'll be announcing a new CEO tomorrow, someone with extensive healthcare credentials and industry relationships. Whatever you decide, Mindwell will dominate this market within a year." It was a calculated jab, designed to reinforce my inevitable defeat. I acknowledged it with a nod and left the conference room. To my surprise, Eliza followed me into the hallway. "Wait," she called, catching up as I reached the elevators. "I need to tell you something." She glanced back toward the conference room, then lowered her voice. "Last night, after I left your office, I did some digging. Dad's been meeting with someone from the Burton Group repeatedly over the past month. The name meant nothing to me." "Who's the Burton Group?" "A private equity firm specializing in healthcare roll-ups. They acquire promising startups, consolidate them into larger entities, then sell them to major corporations at a premium." She paused. "The pattern suggests they're planning something bigger than just squashing Vital Vision. I think they're positioning Mindwell for a major acquisition." This new information shifted my understanding of my father's aggression. He wasn't just defending his investment philosophy, he was orchestrating a specific deal. If Mindwell could establish market dominance in mental health telemedicine, the Burton Group could package it for sale to a major healthcare corporation or insurer. "Do you know the timeline?" I asked. Eliza shook her head. "Not specifically, but based on the meeting frequency, it's moving quickly. Weeks, not months." The elevator arrived, but I made no move to enter it. "Why are you telling me this?" My sister's expression was complicated, part determination, part regret. "Because what Dad's doing isn't just wrong in a general sense. It's, specifically, deliberately harmful. And because I've spent my entire career upholding legal and ethical standards while watching our father bend them when convenient. I'm done being complicit." Her words struck me deeply. Eliza had always been the perfect Blake daughter, following the prescribed path. This stance against our father represented a profound personal shift. "Thank you," I said simply. This helps. There's more, she added, glancing again toward the conference room. I've been reviewing grandfather's trust documents, not just the provisions Dad used to cut you out, but the underlying governance structures. There are irregularities in how the trust has been managed. Dad may have been using trust assets in ways that violate his fiduciary duties. The implications were significant. What kind of irregularities? I need to verify before making specific claims, but preliminary review suggests he's been using trust assets to seed Blake Capital investments without proper disclosure or authorization. If true, it's a serious breach of trustee obligations. The elevator doors closed and reopened, but neither of us moved. Eliza, this is your career we're talking about. If you go against Dad on this, I know, she interrupted. But some things matter more than career advancement. The truth matters. What's right matters. As I finally stepped into the elevator, Eliza added, "Don't sign anything they send you and be careful. Dad's never been more dangerous than when he feels threatened." The doors closed on her warning, leaving me with much to process as I descended to the lobby. The meeting had confirmed my worst fears about my father's intentions, while simultaneously revealing a deeper conspiracy than I'd imagined. This wasn't just about vital vision or my place in the family. It was about a calculated business strategy that treated patients as commodities and healthcare as merely a vehicle for profit extraction. But amid the darkness, two unexpected lights had emerged. Eliza's courage in standing against our father and the revelation of potential vulnerabilities in his position. The Blake family trust irregularities could provide leverage we desperately needed. As I stepped out of the Blake Capitol building into the bright Boston morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Aisha. Dr. Chen agreed to meet us this afternoon instead of canceling. Says she wants to hear our side directly. It was a small reprieve in a storm of setbacks, but it reinforced my resolve. We might be outgunned and outfunded, but we weren't beaten yet. And now, thanks to Eliza, we had insights into my father's true motives and potential weaknesses in his armor. The question was whether we could use this new knowledge fast enough to save vital vision and the patients who depended on us. The meeting with Dr. Chen ended with unexpected victory. The alliance would maintain our partnership after seeing evidence of my father's deception. But celebration was short-lived. That evening, the Boston Globe published their headline, "Mental Health Startup Faces Security Allegations. Founder's Father Leads Competing Investment." Our phones erupted with concerned messages from partners and users. Our reputation was under attack in the most public way possible. At midnight, I received a text from Eliza. Found proof of trust violations. Dad illegally used trust assets to fund Mindwell. Meet tomorrow. By morning, our office was in crisis mode. Two smaller partners had suspended their contracts. Our runway was down to weeks, not months. Then came the unexpected lifeline, an email from Jason Montgomery at Kauffman Foundation. Board reviewed your security documentation. Grant reinstated with expedited funding. Most surprising was a message from the Burton Group, requesting a meeting to discuss potential strategic partnership directly with Vital Vision, bypassing my father entirely. Standing in our small office, watching my team work tirelessly to protect what we'd built, I realized the truth. My father hadn't made me a failure by cutting me from the inheritance. He had inadvertently given me the greatest gift possible, the chance to succeed entirely, on my own terms. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.